The millionaire's baby kicked and punched all the nannies, but kissed the black cleaning lady. And it was precisely that kiss that changed everything and exposed to truth Manhattan's elite never expected to face. That woman can't stay here. Just look at her. Victoria Pettin's shrill voice echoed through the penthouse's marble hall. She'll contaminate my grandson with who knows what. Keisha Williams, 28, stood motionless in the center of the room, gently cradling Lil Harrison in her arms. The 18-month-old baby, known for his violent outbursts against all previous nannies, slept peacefully against her chest. His fists, which had once punched, now relaxed against her blue uniform blouse. Grandma's right, Daddy. Jennifer Pettin crossed her arms, her diamonds sparkling beneath the chandelier. You can't let just anyone from cleaning hold Harrison. We have to maintain standards. The Upper East Side apartment was buzzing with tension. 5 specialized nannies had been fired in the past month, kicked, bitten, and assaulted by little Harrison. The boy violently rejected every attempt at care, turning the life of his widowed father, real estate mogul David Cross, into a daily nightmare. But there was Keisha, the night cleaner, called in during the day for an emergency, holding that impossible child as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She must have some dirty trick, Victoria whispered, loudly enough for everyone to hear. These people always have questionable methods for dealing with children. Keisha felt every word like a blade, but she remained calm. Raised in the Bronx, the daughter of a nurse and a mechanic, she was familiar with this kind of venom disguised as maternal concern. Her eyes met those of David Cross, who was watching the scene with an indecipherable expression. "Maybe I'd better go," Keisha said softly, beginning to transfer Harrison to the crib. The baby immediately began to cry and reached his little arms toward her, refusing to let go of her shirt. It was the first time in months Harrison had shown affection for anyone. "Impressive," said Dr. Martinez, the family pediatrician, watching in fascination. "In my 20-year career, I've never seen such an immediate and positive reaction. It's as if he recognizes something in her." "Recognizes what?" Victoria retorted dismissively. "She's just a cleaning lady." But Keisha saw something in Dr. Martinez's eyes that the others missed, a scientific curiosity mixed with respect. He had realized what she had always known. Children don't lie. They sense genuine energy in a way adults, corrupted by prejudice, never can. "Mr. Cross," Keisha said calmly, "may I make a suggestion?" David nodded, intrigued by the confidence in her voice. "Let me stay with Harrison for an hour. If he's okay, consider that maybe the problem isn't with the nannies, but with whoever is choosing them." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria paled. Jennifer opened her mouth in shock, and David Cross realized he had just witnessed the first act of a play far more complex than he had imagined. While everyone processed Keisha's words, she maintained the serenity that only exists in those who have weathered far worse storms and lived to tell the tale. Her eyes revealed a quiet strength that made some of those present realize they had seriously underestimated her. If you're wondering how a simple cleaning lady had the courage to challenge Manhattan's elite, keep listening, because what happened in the next few hours would forever change the lives of everyone in that room. A silent battle of wills. The hour Keisha had proposed turned into a silent battle of wills. Victoria Pettin couldn't accept that her blue-blooded grandson showed affection for a working-class black woman, while Jennifer circled the room like a predator, searching for any excuse to expel that intruder from her sacred territory. "David, you can't be seriously considering this," Victoria whispered harshly, her eyes fixed on Keisha, who was playing on the floor with Harrison. "Imagine what the neighbors will think, what they'll say at the club." Keisha pretended not to hear, though every word was like salt on an old wound that had been bleeding for years. Since childhood in the Bronx, she had learned that her presence bothered people like Victoria. Her mother, a night shift nurse, always said, "Honey, they'll try to make you believe you don't belong anywhere. Prove them wrong." And Keisha had. She'd earned a full scholarship in child development, graduated with honors, and worked in daycare centers in upscale neighborhoods, where mothers praised her privately but never invited her to social gatherings. When her mother developed diabetes and lost her health insurance, Keisha took on night cleaning jobs to pay for the expensive medication. "Dad, look how calm Harrison is," Jennifer said pointedly. "She must have given him something. These people know methods we don't." David Cross watched with growing discomfort. For the first time in months, his son was playing normally, laughing, even eating the baby food Keisha offered him with infinite patience. But the family pressure was relentless. "Maybe we should do some tests on the boy," Victoria suggested, her voice dripping with venom, "to make sure he hasn't been exposed to anything inappropriate." Keisha felt a cold anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. At 28, she had faced subtle and overt prejudice in every job, every interview, and every social interaction. She knew reacting emotionally would only confirm their stereotypes. "Mr. Cross," Keisha said calmly, still playing with Harrison, "may I ask how many specialized nannies have tried to care for him in the past few months?" 15, David replying, surprised by his own candor. "And what was the profile of these nannies?" Keisha continued, her voice soft but firm. David hesitated. Victoria and Jennifer exchanged nervous glances, realizing where this was going. "Well, they were all white, wealthy, from the same social class as you," Keisha finished, standing with Harrison in her arms. "Interesting how an 18-month-old can distinguish authenticity from pretense, don't you think?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Jennifer opened and closed her mouth several times. Victoria flushed with indignation, and Dr. Martinez watched Keisha with growing admiration. "How dare you?" Victoria began, but was interrupted by David's phone. "Excuse me, I have to take this. It's the office." He left the room, and the tension thickened. Victoria seized the opportunity. "Listen here, you. I know people like you. You see a rich family and think you can take advantage of them." "People like me?" Keisha repeated. "Don't play dumb. Ambitious, manipulative, always looking for a way to get ahead at the expense of others." Jennifer joined in. "You're probably already planning how to seduce David for an easy life." Keisha smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but carried the weight of years dealing with people just like them. "You know, you're right about one thing," she said softly, rocking Harrison, who was starting to get sleepy. "I am ambitious, very ambitious, but not in the way you think." At that moment, David returned, immediately sensing the tension. "Did something happen?" "We were just getting to know our guest better," Victoria said sweetly. Keisha looked directly at him. "Mr. Cross, Harrison fell asleep in my arms, for the first time in weeks, according to Dr. Martinez. May I make the suggestion?" David nodded, intrigued by the confidence in her voice. "Hire me as a temporary nanny. 1 week. If Harrison doesn't adjust, I'll leave quietly. But if he does..." She paused, meeting Victoria's gaze. "Perhaps it's time to ask why 15 qualified women failed where a simple cleaning lady succeeded." The provocation was sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Victoria paled, realizing she had underestimated this woman. Jennifer bit her lip, feeling control slipping. Dr. Martinez broke the silence. "Mr. Cross, from a medical standpoint, Harrison's well-being must come first. And in my 20 years of experience, I've never seen such an immediate and positive reaction. It's as if he recognizes something in her." "Recognizes what?" David looked at his son, sleeping peacefully in Keisha's arms, then at the faces of Victoria and Jennifer, masking their despair. For the first time in months, he felt hope. 1 week, he said finally, but with a few conditions. Victoria and Jennifer exchanged panicked glances. What they didn't know is that Keisha had spent the past 4 months observing this family during her night shifts, studying their dynamics, learning their secrets, and realizing that behind all that wealth and arrogance lay deep dysfunction, and she was more than ready to face it. A test of grace. Keisha's first week as a temporary nanny was a masterclass in psychological warfare disguised as courtesy. Victoria and Jennifer had decided to make her life a living hell, with 1,000 little cuts, each carefully calculated to appear accidental or justifiable. "Oh, what a shame! I forgot to mention that Harrison is allergic to peanuts," Jennifer said casually, after she had already prepared his snack. "Good thing I noticed before he ate it. Imagine if something had happened." Keisha smiled serenely as she wiped the table. "How lucky. I'll write down all his allergies. By the way, from what I saw in the medical records on the refrigerator, he's only allergic to seafood. Did I read it wrong?" The silence that followed was delightful. Jennifer didn't expect a simple cleaning lady to know how to read medical records or to realize that the information about peanuts was a blatant lie.
But Keisha knew much more than they imagined. During 4 months of night shifts, she had observed, listened, and learned. She knew that Victoria was taking antidepressants behind David's back, that Jennifer was secretly drowning in debt because of her online gambling addiction, and that David had inherited the company, but Victoria controlled 40% of the shares through a trust fund she used as an emotional weapon. More importantly, Keisha knew both women were desperate to keep Harrison isolated from inappropriate influences because they had very specific plans for the child's future and the family's money. "Dr. Martinez called today," Victoria announced over dinner, her voice dripping with false concern. "He wants to talk to you about some
Emotional manipulation? Dr. Martinez frowned. Miss Petton, Harrison is demonstrating the first healthy bond he has had since his mother's death. That is an extremely positive sign. Jennifer tried a different angle. But doctor, people from her background sometimes use techniques that we don't understand. Perhaps we should investigate further. Dr. Martinez's eyes hardened. Miss Cross, may I ask what techniques exactly you're referring to? The silence that followed was brutal. Jennifer and Victoria exchanged nervous glances, realizing they had overstepped. Well, Victoria tried to recover. We just want to make sure Harrison is receiving care appropriate for a child of his social standing. That was the moment Dr. Martinez fully understood. His eyes met Keisha's, and in them she saw both anger and resolve. Ladies, he said coldly, in 20 years of medical practice, I have never seen a child respond so positively to a caregiver. Keisha has formal training in child development, something none of the previous nannies possessed. If there are any real concerns about Harrison's well-being, I suggest you document them specifically and in writing with concrete evidence. Victoria flushed crimson. Doctor, you don't understand this social situation. I understand perfectly, Dr. Martinez interrupted, and as Harrison's physician, my official recommendation is that Keisha continue as his primary caregiver. In fact, I'll be noting this in his medical records. After he left, Victoria and Jennifer sat in stunned silence. Keisha continued playing with Harrison as if nothing had happened, but inside she felt the first victory in a war that had only just begun. That night, she received a message from Professor Williams. I've arrived in town. I need to show you some things I've discovered about the Cross family. Information that changes everything. As she watched Harrison sleep peacefully, Keisha smiled. During 4 months of night shifts, she had collected much more than dust from the furniture. She had collected secrets. And now, with powerful allies at her side, she was ready to show Victoria and Jennifer that they had chosen the wrong adversary. What they didn't know was that the real battle hadn't even begun. The meeting Professor Williams arranged with Keisha completely changed the course of the silent war unfolding in the Upper East Side penthouse. Sitting in an inconspicuous cafe in Brooklyn, he opened a folder filled with documents that would make Victoria and Jennifer regret every poisonous word they had ever spoken. Keisha, he said quietly, what I've discovered about the Cross family goes far beyond prejudice. He slid photographs and documents across the table. Victoria Petton isn't just a controlling mother-in-law. She's systematically manipulating David's legal situation to take full control of Harrison's inheritance. The evidence was damning. Victoria had hired private investigators to record every unfit decision David made as a father, building a legal case to question his competence. Meanwhile, Jennifer was secretly working with lawyers to establish a trust fund she would control on Harrison's behalf, effectively stealing the child's inheritance. Look at this, Professor Williams said, pointing to a series of printed emails. Victoria's been contacting child psychologists, trying to find one willing to diagnose Harrison with a disorder that would justify removing him from David. And Jennifer, she's worse than we thought. Bank records revealed that Jennifer had embezzled nearly $200,000 from family accounts to cover her gambling debts and was now using Harrison's name as collateral for loans David didn't even know existed. Professor, that's criminal. Exactly, and there's more. He showed photographs of Jennifer entering underground gambling dens. She owes almost $500,000 to loan sharks. She's desperate. Keisha felt everything click into place.
That's why they want me gone. It's not just prejudice, I'm a threat to their plan. If David realizes Harrison thrives under my care, he'll never question his own ability as a father. Exactly. And tomorrow, there's a family meeting scheduled. They're planning to present a fake psychological report on Harrison and recommend that David accept help in managing his finances and decisions about the child. That night, Keisha worked until dawn, but she wasn't cleaning. She was preparing the most meticulous revenge Victoria and Jennifer could imagine. Over 4 months of night work, she had gathered evidence. Photographs of Victoria hiding her antidepressants, recordings of Jennifer lying about debts, and, most importantly, proof that both had deliberately sabotaged previous nannies to isolate David. The next morning, Keisha called Dr. Martinez. "Doctor, I need you to attend the family meeting today. As his attending physician, you have a legal right to be present when they discuss his well-being." "Of course, but why?" "Because today," Keisha replied steadily, "Victoria and Jennifer are going to learn that they've seriously underestimated the wrong woman." The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. at the family's law office. David arrived looking nervous, unsure why his mother had insisted on such a formal gathering. Victoria and Jennifer entered radiant with confidence, carrying organized folders of evidence against David and Keisha. "David, dear," Victoria began sweetly, "we're concerned about some of the decisions you've been making, especially regarding Harrison's care." Jennifer opened her folder. "We've hired Dr. Peterson, a renowned child psychologist, to assess the situation. He has some important recommendations about necessary changes." Dr. Peterson, a 60-year-old man with gold-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Mr. Cross, based on family reports, I believe Harrison is developing inappropriate attachments that could harm his future social development." "Inappropriate attachments?" David repeated, frowning. "To individuals who do not share the same cultural and social values as the family," Dr. Peterson continued delicately, avoiding Keisha's name. "I recommend an immediate change of caregivers, as well as an assessment of your decision-making capacity as a single parent." The silence in the room was shattered by a knock at the door. Dr. Martinez entered, followed by Professor Williams and, to everyone's shock, Keisha. "Sorry to interrupt," Dr. Martinez said coolly, "but as Harrison's attending physician, I believe you're about to make a terrible mistake." Victoria paled. What does that mean?" Keisha opened her own folder, much thicker than Jennifer's. "It means that during 4 months of working in this house, I have collected enough evidence to bury you both legally, financially, and socially." Professor Williams introduced himself formally. "I'm Dr. James Williams, consultant on child custody cases for the New York Family Court. And after reviewing the evidence collected by Ms. Keisha, I can say that we are dealing with a clear case of family manipulation and misappropriation." Jennifer began to sweat visibly. "Evidence? What evidence?" Keisha smiled, that serene smile that Victoria and Jennifer had seen before, but now finally understood its true meaning. "Well, let's start with your emails, Victoria." Keisha placed printouts on the table. "Specifically, your attempts to bribe Dr. Peterson to provide a false diagnosis about Harrison." Dr. Peterson blushed. "This is a misunderstanding." "No, it's not," Professor Williams interrupted. "We have phone recordings where you discuss modifying your report in exchange for donations to your private clinic." Victoria tried to stand up, but Keisha continued relentlessly. "And Jennifer, did you really think I wouldn't notice the bank statements you left on the office desk during my nightly cleanings?" David stared at his ex-sister-in-law in shock. "Jennifer, what statements?" Keisha slid documents across the table. Loans of $80,000 using Harrison as collateral, unauthorized transfers from family accounts, and my favorite, pausing dramatically, photographs of you entering illegal gambling establishments in Queens. The silence in the room was deafening. Jennifer was pale as a ghost, Victoria was visibly shaking, and Dr. Peterson was discreetly trying to leave the room. "But the best part," Keisha continued unrelentingly, "is the recordings of the two of you plotting how to sabotage me, including Jennifer's attempt to plant cocaine in my purse last week." "Cocaine?" David exploded. "Jennifer, are you crazy?" Professor Williams picked up a digital recorder. Mr. Cross, would you like to hear exactly what your mother and sister-in-law have been saying about Keisha and you over the past few months? For the next 20 minutes, the room was filled with the voices of Victoria and Jennifer distilling prejudice, planning sabotage, and discussing how to manipulate David into taking control of his inheritance. Every word was a stab at the dignity they had tried to maintain. "My God," David murmured, his face in his hands. "I trusted you." Victoria attempted one last desperate defense. "David, you don't understand. That woman planned all of this. She manipulated us." Keisha stood up calmly. "You're right about one thing. I planned all of this, but not to harm David or Harrison, to protect them from you." She turned to David. "Mr. Cross, for 4 months I watched as your mother and sister-in-law systematically tried to undermine your confidence as a father. I saw how they rejected any nanny who truly connected with Harrison because that would prove that the problem wasn't with him, but with the toxic environment they had created." Dr. Martinez spoke up. "David, from a medical standpoint, Keisha is right. Harrison has no behavioral disorder. He was reacting to the emotional stress caused by the constant manipulation he was witnessing." Professor Williams placed one last document on the table. "And, legally, you two have committed serious crimes: embezzlement, attempted fraud, bribery, and conspiracy to harm the welfare of a child." Jennifer collapsed into a chair crying. Victoria, realizing she